Of all the ingredients for podcasting success, consistency is always high on top of the list. But do podcasters, as creative people, get bored when their sound remains the same? Hello and welcome to another Podcast Pontifications with me, Evo Terra. Are you making the podcast you were born to make? Or do you have other creative itches that need to be scratched? That's our lives as podcasters. We're doing this creative thing. And we get popular, or we get successful, or we get into our groove, if you will. And I wonder if we're doing what we need to do creatively from now on. I mean, I've been doing this for 16 years. Well, not this show, which is kind of the idea. I want you to think about recording artists like Bruce Springsteen. Even if you are not a fan of Bruce Springsteen, you probably recognize that Bruce Springsteen has been making music for years, and they all sound pretty much the same. Bruce Springsteen has a very consistent style. Same for some of my favorite bands like Cake and Soul Coughing. I can smell a Cake song from across the room. Same thing for Soul Coughing, even when they start exploring new, interesting ideas. Compare and contrast that with bands like Jefferson Airplane, or as they've been known by 19 different names throughout their career. Their sound has changed drastically over time. Same with Gwen Stefani. I started listening to Gwen when she was with No Doubt, and now she's on the new poppy type stuff. The Beatles, for that matter. Listening to the Beatles' discography, it's a wide range of sounds. It's not just musicians, also other creative people. Like, did you know Leonard Nimoy, Spock, has poetry books? Check out Warmed by Love for arguably the best book title, not best, book cover ever. You can name a whole bunch of other actors that have tried their hand first off at singing and a variety of things, right? So I guess the good news about when a podcaster decides to explore their creative itch and do something different, break out of the routine that they are in, the good news is that unlike, say, actors, we don't have to shut. Well, I shouldn't say unlike actors, like actors. You know, when a band decides to go a different direction, there's only so many albums a band can release in a year. And while they're working on one album with a new, interesting style and sound, they can't make the album that their fans really want them to make, which is the one that just sounds like that last album. Actors and podcasters have more flexibility. We don't have to shut everything down to try something new, right? It just takes more time and energy and investment. We may not have a lot of time, energy, and investment for our show continuing, but we probably can do it a bit easier. Now, that might alienate some of our listeners. If we go in a radically different direction and try something we wanted to do, it might alienate new listeners. But that's okay because we still have our other show, the thing we're known for, or the things we're known for, going. So I guess where the risk is somebody might accidentally, a brand new person might hit that new thing and think that's what is indicative of all of our work. And that wouldn't be a good thing, but, you know, that's reality. We can't hit everything. Why do we make changes like this? Why are we thinking about creative changes? You know, when bands, people in bands, when musicians make a change, sometimes they do it to chase trends. Sometimes they're listening to their producer or on the advice of their label so they can sell more copies. But in some cases, they just want to do things that are different because they want to do things that are different. I wonder what's trending in podcasting. How do we know? So we could maybe take that on. Or what keeps us relevant? What kind of show could we produce that is more relevant than the thing we might have been doing for a few years, possibly? Or what, as a podcaster, are topics and ideas that you want to explore? New ways of making shows that you don't make them. Now, some of us don't really want to make huge, drastic changes, and that's okay. Sometimes we just want to make smaller changes, more subtle, moving around our style a bit, much like Springsteen and Cake and Soul Coughing, some of the bands and people I've mentioned. Not everything is exactly the same. They're making some growth, but not wild changes. So maybe you just want to do something similar like, I don't know, Go solo if you're doing a multi-person show, or let somebody else take care of the interview if in fact it's an interview show, or who knows what else it might be. I'm a big fan of exploring creative itches, and I know, like you know, that there's no easier way than podcasting to do it. I mean, we have the skills, right? We know what we're doing. We can sit behind a microphone and we can talk. What else can we do around that to explore creativity so that we don't just feel like we're doing the same thing over and over again? But there's nothing wrong with doing the same thing over and over again. I have to come back to that. Did I mention that Cake and Soul Coughing are two of my favorite bands? And I love when they explore, but I also love when they don't explore. There's no reason. I'm not advocating everybody go out and change. I'm a huge proponent of change. I love change. I change things all the time. But it's not what we have to do. All we have to do is make sure that when we get that creative itch, we find a way to scratch it. And I think podcasting lends itself to so many ways that we can do that. Now, if you like the things I had to say today, please consider going to buymeacoffee.com/evoterra and buying me a virtual coffee. But more important than that, please tell a friend, someone who also has a podcast, about podcast pontifications, right? I would really appreciate the boost, and I would like for you to give this to someone. Maybe they're just starting out. Maybe they've been around for a long time. Maybe they just need to hear from people who are being supportive of their podcasting efforts, not telling them how to do this and how to get started and all. Just the ideas around podcasting that all of us working podcasters should be thinking of. That's really the core of what I'm trying to do with podcast pontifications here in the year of 21. That's my goal. Right? Thanks. I shall be back tomorrow with yet another podcast pontifications. Cheers!